Welcome to a new beginning on the Sham Sharma Show Global. I promise that over the next couple of months, we'll be making a new set. And so we're not recording in the regular channel studio. This is a new weekly show that will be running on our global channel. Here, we will recap the big news events of the week, as well as deep dive on a particular hot button topic of the week. So let's dive right in. Some big events happened this week. The nation of Thailand has chosen Lord Hanuman as the official mascot for the 2023 Asian Athletics Championships, which is Asia's biggest track and field event. Which honestly is a brilliant move, because who better to represent the spirit of sportsmanship than the one who can leap across oceans, lift mountains, and fight demons to the ground. But I do imagine that certain intellectuals in India won't be too enthused about this announcement, as bringing up anything related to Hindu culture for them is a little bit like bringing up their ex at their wedding.
Oh my god!
It just makes them really uncomfortable. And listen, Thailand's playing with fire here. Because if India tried something like this, every single NGO and every single intellectual and every single political party would be pleading NATO to attack India and overthrow its oppressive Hindu supremacist regime. So good luck to Thailand with that. Pakistan was also in the news. Pakistan is a country that is in such economic dire straits that in their country, the popular game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is simply known as Who Wants to Win 5 Rupees. Pakistan is so desperate for money that they've recently announced a policy that says that whoever invests in their country will be given a Pakistani citizenship. Okay, look, Pakistan, we share the same DNA, so I have some affinity there. So let me give you some basic business or negotiation advice. If you want something valuable like money, you also have to offer something valuable in return. Offering the citizenship of Pakistan in return for investment is like asking for Indian food but offering British food in return. It's like asking for money but offering shit, actual human shit, in return. Another big news this past week was that ISRO, the Indian Space Agency, successfully launched Chandrayaan 3, their probe that will land on the moon and provide invaluable research to ISRO. Now, this is a wonderful achievement for India. It's a wonderful achievement for the global scientific community, but there were also some unexpected people that have latched on to this achievement. Some Pakistanis are calling it not an Indian achievement, but a South Asian achievement. This is like the people who remake Tollywood movies into Bollywood movies, basically copy the movies scene by scene and pretend like they've made a masterpiece. Except, to be honest, it's not even that. Pakistanis have had literally no contribution to India's space mission. However, let me offer an olive branch. I will allow the Pakistanis to latch on to India's scientific achievements if they're willing to accept that when they say South Asian achievement, what they really mean is that it's an achievement for Akhand Bharat. Balls in your court. But unfortunately, as usual, as is to be expected, the worst take on India's Chandrayaan 3 mission did not come from a Westerner, did not come from a Pakistani, it came from an Indian.
जितना मैंने सुना और पढ़ा और देखा है, चांद पे पहुंचने का कुछ अब फायदा है नहीं, इसीलिए अमेरिका ने भी पिछले आई थिंक 48 इयर्स से कोई यूनिमिशन नहीं भेजा. अपोलो 13 वाज द लास्ट वन, आखिरी अपोलो 13 है, उसके बाद तो कोई नहीं गया, क्योंकि वहां अगर वो उन्हें भेजी थी इतनी मिशंस, कुछ मिला नहीं, कुछ फायदा था नहीं. अब
Wow. This is the kind of guy that probably thinks that we don't even need the police in India because he personally has never been a victim of a crime. There are so many things wrong with this video clip. First of all, America is actually planning to go back to the moon in 2024 as part of their Artemis program, which aims to establish a sustainable human presence on the lunar surface. They have already selected the astronauts who will be part of the first crewed mission, which will also include the first woman to walk on the moon.
To the moon.
To the moon.
To the moon. To the moon.
Second of all, space exploration isn't just about going to space for the heck of it. It's also about advancing science and technology. And because of that, there's a huge economic incentive as well. Many of the technologies and discoveries that have come from space exploration have had direct or indirect benefits for humanity. For example, did you know that satellite navigation, weather forecasting, solar panels, MRI scanners, water filters, memory foam mattresses, and even baby formula are all products and services that were either developed or improved upon because of space exploration. And imagine the massive amounts of economic windfall that have befallen all these nations who developed these technologies. Honestly, man, this week I saw a video of a guy getting bit on his balls by a dog, and I still think that this is the worst video I've seen the entire week.
चांद पे पहुंचने का कुछ अब फायदा है नहीं.
And finally, the Indian opposition parties got together this past week to announce their new strategy for the upcoming 2024 general elections in India, which is basically the same strategy they tried in 2014 and 2019 and failed with. Asked about the efficacy of trying this same strategy over and over again, the opposition spokesperson said 0% of the time this strategy works every time. So instead of spending too much time on this meat, I would like to recap the opposition meat for you in this short, succinct video. Enjoy. But in our main story today, I want to talk about caste. It is a topic inextricably linked with India, just like Salman Khan with Vivek Oberoi's career.
And you see these brown faces, or you see these Asian faces, and you think,
is
equal or better than our country.
Literally.
And you're telling us how awful we are.
You see an upper caste state at work.
Caste represents one of the more ancient, if you will, forms of division, dating more than 3,000 years in what we now know as the subcontinent, India.
There's cheers in Seattle, the first city in the United States to ban caste discrimination.
But I want to show you something. Take a look at this picture. This is an artwork depicting the division of society. The people at the bottom are the working class, which includes peasants, workers, laborers, and traders. The people in the middle are the nobility or the ruling class, and the topmost layer is the clergy, that is, the priests. Now, as you can imagine, unless the people in the picture have been using ungodly amounts of fair and handsome cream, this piece of art has nothing to do with India. It is in fact a 15th century French artwork showing the three estates of France, with King Charles VII at the center, below the priests and above the commoners.
The class system was based upon your education, aspirational values, your family's history, and much more.
Traitors to our class will be put up against a wall and shot.
And always happy to give smart answers to men born better than you.
And I imagine you have found out already that no amount of money allows you to pass through the steel sheets that separate class from class.
Yes.
But wait a second, I thought this kind of a division of society existed only in India.
मेरे खुद के खानदान में है। मैं चूंकि मेरी जो दादी थी वो दूसरी कास्ट से थी, वो छोटी जात से थी। आज भी उन्होंने हमें एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया अगर देखा जाए तो। जो शेख सिद्दीकी होते हैं हमारे कास्ट में बड़ी अपर कास्ट है, ये उस तरह का है उनका वो एटीट्यूड वो है।
लेकिन भारत में जमीन पर वर्गीकरण है। इसमें 3 वर्ग हैं, अशराफ, अजलाफ और अर्जाल। अशराफ में आती है पावरफुल जातियां, इसके बाद आते हैं अजलाफ, इसे मध्य वर्ग भी कहा जा सकता है। फिर बारी आती है अर्जाल की, इसमें सामाजिक और आर्थिक तौर पर कमजोर जातियां शामिल हैं।
एक रूलिंग क्लास मुस्लिम है और दूसरा एक इंडिजिनस मुस्लिम है जो कभी रूलर नहीं रहा है, वो कामगार जातियां रही हैं।
That's very interesting. So it obviously begs the question, is caste a uniquely Hindu phenomenon? Well, let's talk about it. Any discussion on caste is incomplete without defining what caste really is. Because much like blockchain or Dhinchak Pooja's deep lyrics,
दिलों का शूटर है मेरा स्कूटर, दिलों का शूटर।
अरे कहना क्या चाहते हो?
people like to discuss caste without fully understanding what it really is. So to understand caste, it's important for us to understand where the word caste comes from. In 1493, the Spanish began the colonization of the Americas. The Spanish started to use the word casta, meaning lineage or clan, to define the local subgroups within the native population. 5 years after this, in 1498, professional Santa Claus cosplayer Vasco da Gama reached India via this route. And I just want to ask Vasco da Gama one thing. What the fuck happened here, man? What? 6 years after that, the Portuguese Empire reached India. Now, when they reached India, concepts like Varna and Jati were so complicated and confusing for the Portuguese that they employed the same word, Casta, to explain the thousands of Varnas and Jatis found in India, to include diverse groups like the Kayasthas, the Rajputs, the Bhumihars, the Mahars, and many, many others. And then came the British. And see, when it comes to the British and India, they have the opposite of the Midas touch. You see, Midas turned everything he touched into gold, whereas the British, when it comes to India, anything they touched turned to complete shit. So when the British came to India, they saw the phenomena of Jati and Varna and they applied the same classification on it. They just changed the word Casta to caste. Another thing that the British did was they mixed jati and varna into caste, which is a completely stupid way to understand what jati and varna are. In fact, when the British administrators came to India, they divided the Indian population into nearly 2,500 jatis in the early 20th century. And if you were to fit all of these jatis and all of these different communities into the fourfold varna or caste system, it's just not going to fit. It's like trying to fit Lalu Yadav's entire family into a Maruti Swift. It's just not going to happen. See, the Varna system is a historical system which divides Indian society into 4 occupation-based groups. The Brahmins or the priestly or scholarly class, the Kshatriya or the warrior ruling class, the Vaishya or the trader class, and the Shudra or the working class. And jatis are small endogamous groups that tend to live together and have diverse practices under the umbrella of Hinduism. For example, when the entire country celebrates Bhaiya Dooj, the Kayasts of Uttar Pradesh celebrate Chitragupt Puja, where they don't touch their pen for an entire day out of reverence for their god Chitragupt. And historically, the Varna system has not been as ironclad or as strict as people would like you to think. Look, first and foremost, let's be very clear about one thing. I don't agree with the claim that caste-based discrimination is a British construct. Varna and Varna-based discrimination is a concept that existed before the British came to India. Let's not lie to ourselves about that. In fact, unfortunately, certain passages in our Shastras and our Smritis support discrimination between Varnas. Manusmriti prohibits teaching the Vedas to Shudras. Apastambha Dharma Sutra says, Shudras are originated from falsehood. Shatpatha Brahman says, women, Shudras, dogs and crows inherit vice, falsehood and darkness. Society often didn't function like this. Different areas of the countries had different varna or jatis that were much more powerful than the so-called upper varnas. Think of the ancient, powerful Maurya kingdom that ruled over most of India. The Mauryas were not an upper caste community. In fact, they're listed as an OBC community today. Take another powerful example from Magad, the Gupta Empire, under which India had its so-called golden age. But even the Guptas were not upper caste. They came from the Vaishya or trader class. Take the Maratha Empire, which are revered by every Indian across India, who effectively ended Islamic rule in India. These were also not traditionally from the upper caste community and were made up of various tradesman castes. King Avantivarman of Kashmir was from a so-called lower caste. Chintamani Dhoba, an ancient king from Bengal, was also from a so-called lower caste community. So even though caste discrimination clearly existed before the British, and the people that were of these so-called lower castes often had some very clear disadvantages in society. However, caste or varna has never been an ironclad or strict system. Let's take a contemporary example. The Jats of Haryana or the Jats of Punjab, despite not being from the upper Brahmin caste, are the most powerful and influential caste groups in these two states. In fact, the Jats are listed as an OBC community in India. The Reddys of Andhra Pradesh are also not a Brahmin caste, but are also a very powerful, very influential group in Andhra Pradesh and were even part of the ruling class of the state throughout its history. Many prominent saints and practitioners of the Bhakti movement, which was extremely popular in India in the medieval age, were also from the so-called lower castes. So characterizing Indian society as having an ironclad and extremely strict caste system is unfair, and it also ignores history. It also ignores the fact that Hinduism has gone through evolution over time. Even Manu, who wrote the Manusmriti, said in his text that the Manusmriti should be edited and evolved as times change. See, the people that don't like Sanatan Dharma or India's culture, what they don't understand about Sanatan Dharma is that it is not unalterable like Abrahamic religions like Christianity and Islam, which are considered to be the final word of God, and changing anything in these religions amounts to blasphemy. In Indian society, many intellectuals and reformers that are respected by a large number of Hindus today, like Veer Savarkar, Swami Vivekananda, and the Arya Samaj, were very strongly anti-caste and have often openly rejected discriminatory passages in Hindu Shastras and scriptures.
Veer Savarkar was against the caste system.
The BJP and the RSS, two of the most prominent and influential Hindu political and social organizations, also very strongly reject the caste system. They have worked for the upliftment of the oppressed classes, and as a result, today the voting base of the BJP, the Hindu Nationalist Party of India, is dominated not by the upper castes but by the OBCs and the scheduled castes. And so now that we understand the Varna system in India a little bit better, we should try and understand why the British British decided to classify the Varna system into the caste system the way that they did? Well, maybe the mirror is just as clean as the glasses that you're wearing. Meaning that many experts argue that the British perception of Indian Varna and Indian Jatis was very much shaped by the British class system they saw close to home. See, the British society too was historically divided into classes. The bird's eye classification would probably divide British society into low class and upper class. However, there were a lot of different classes. There was the cottager or laborer, the husbandsman, the yeoman, the professional and businessman, the clergy, the gentry who had assets, the knight, the baronet, the aristocracy, and then finally the royal family. And discrimination between different classes was very, very strong. In fact, in 1941, George Orwell wrote that Britain was the most class-ridden society under the sun. In fact, this is the class system on which the British Parliament was based on. The House of Commons was initially for the working class and the House of Lords was for the nobility and the clergy. Now, in 1999, most of these hereditary seats in the House of Lords were abolished, but the symbolism is still there. The British Parliament still recognizes the existence of the three estates, and the clergy in the form of the Church of England bishops also are entitled to sit in the upper house as the House of Lords spiritual. As we've shown you, this was also the case in France, where the society was divided into three estates. These three estates are also seen in the Holy Roman Empire. A similar class system was also seen as far east as Japan, where the society was divided into a clear hierarchy consisting of a number of classes. In fact, to this day, there is a class of people called the slaughtermen in Japan that are considered untouchables. But in Asia, another class system exists, which is there in plain sight, but people ignore it anyway. A bit like a no parking sign or a red light anywhere in India. And that is the Arab class system. See, Islam is often painted as the most egalitarian religion on the planet. There is no discrimination in Islam. Everyone is equal under the eyes of God. Well, in theory, this might be true, but the practice is very different. See, in Arab culture, many tribes are considered historically superior to other tribes due to their proximity to the Prophet of Islam and the followers of the Prophet of Islam. Marriage between individuals from superior or inferior tribes is often frowned upon in Arab society. In Saudi Arabia, members of non-Wahhabi Sunni subgroups face varying levels of scrutiny and discrimination, including restricted religious freedoms due to Wahhabis' definition of Sunni Islam along strict lines. The Saudis and the Arabs also see themselves as the original Muslims. The Prophet was an Arab, thus they see themselves and other Arabs as superior to Muslims who were converted later. Which is why, even though they're both Muslims, Arab families rarely marry their daughters to Pakistani or Bangladeshi men because they're considered inferior Muslims. In Oman, there are certain tribes that were historically enslaved by other tribes. The descendants of these servant tribes are victims of widespread discrimination. In fact, Oman was one of the last nations on earth to abolish slavery in 1970. In fact, even in the Indian subcontinent, Islam is not caste-free. There is caste-based discrimination among Muslims as well.
मेरे खुद के खानदान में है। मैं चूंकि मेरी जो दादी थी वो दूसरी कास्ट से थी, वो छोटी जात से थी और बाकी बड़े लोग थे, लेकिन आज भी उन्होंने हमें एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया अगर देखा जाए तो।
And this is because Muslim society in the Indian subcontinent is also divided into three castes. At the top sit the Ashraf. Pasmanda is a term that means oppressed and backward in Urdu. It is a term used by some Muslim activists and scholars to refer to the Ajlaf and Azral communities. These two communities constitute about 85% of the Muslim population in India. Here's some data that shows how the Pasmanda community is oppressed by the Ashraf community. The literacy rate of the Muslim OBC is lower than other OBC communities in India. Ashraf Muslims by far outnumber Muslim OBCs in terms of access to higher education. As per one analysis, out of the 7,500 elected representatives from the 1st to the 14th Lok Sabha, 400 were Muslim, out of which 340 were from the upper caste Ashraf community. Only 60 Muslims were from the Pasmanda community, who form 85% of India's Muslim population. Ashrafs have a 2.1% share in the country's population, but their representation in the Lok Sabha was around 4.5%. On the other hand, Pasmanda's share in the population was around 11% of the country, and still they had a mere 0.8% representation in the Indian parliament. So, now that we know all this information, two things are possible. Either India is truly a Vishwaguru and has influenced the entire world in such an immense way that it gave the entire world not just yoga, but also deeply embedded the caste system within Muslim Arabia and Christian Europe. Or tribal or class discrimination has existed in other countries as well, and not just India. So saying that only Hinduism has a caste system is a lie, just like saying that Adipurush was going to be India's answer to the MCU.
If Hollywood have Marvel, Avengers, like that, India's answer for those all franchises is Adipurush. that of our own mythology.
So that was a lie.
So the question is, if an idiot like me can find this information and debunk the hypothesis that only Hinduism has a caste system, then why doesn't the media, why don't intellectuals talk about this more? Well, one possible explanation could be that at least in the West, the class system has more or less disappeared. The descendant of a baron today doesn't necessarily have to feel superior to the descendant of a working class man. And in India, even today, caste is still quite relevant, especially in the smaller towns and cities. But just like Western countries, caste discrimination is weakening in India as well. And the Hindutva movement, whether people like it or not, has played a huge part in it. Like we showed you, the BJP's voter base is dominated by OBCs and scheduled castes. Ram Janmabhoomi movement was a movement of all castes.
What rallies people around is not a vague idea of unity but a specific cause. When Ram Janmabhoomi movement was going on, did people ask each other their castes and contributed to the Kar Seva? No.
Even in the Ram Mandir, which is set to be inaugurated in 2024, on its board, one seat is permanently reserved for a member of the Dalit community. In the Kanwad Yatras, one of the biggest Hindu pilgrimages of the year, there are more Dalits and OBCs than upper castes. And it is a result of the Hindutva movement that in a state like Uttar Pradesh, where it was once thought that the people of Uttar Pradesh will never abandon caste, now people are voting for the BJP by going beyond caste lines. But for some reason, all of these positive developments that have happened in Indian society are forgotten by our intellectuals and our media, just like Jackie Bhagnani was forgotten. See? Even you forgot who that was. India is the only country that is hammered about caste discrimination. Isabel Wilkerson's best-selling book basically blames India for the caste system around the world. And recently, a bill is being tabled in the United States called SB 403, which is going to specifically target Indians for discrimination based on caste. So, what can India do to fight back? Well, the first thing to do is fight and end caste discrimination wherever you see it. And whether people like it or not, Hindutva is one of the biggest anti-caste movements in India today. The next big step would be for Indians to advocate for themselves around the world. Indians are one of the biggest diaspora groups on the planet, and it's high time that they spoke up for themselves. It's high time that they start pushing back against this bullshit. Highlight how other countries have their own caste systems and have had for ages, and also highlight how vastly successful movements like the Bhakti movement, like the Arya Samaj, like the Hindutva movement are also anti-caste movements that have developed in India without Western interference. And if you don't want to do that, well, just share this video with those people. Help me help you. And that's our show today. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Let me know in the comments below what topics you'd like me to cover either in the recap or in our main topic for the next video. If you like today's video, also make sure to let me know in the comment section if you like this format and if I should continue with this format. Other than that, we will see you for the next episode, and until then, stay happy, stay healthy. We'll see you next time, and to all of you, is secular pranam.